A list of names connected to late financier and convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein is set to be released.
Around 200 names are set to be released,
revealing the names of people associated to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein.
That Epstein client list is going to become public.
Jeffrey Epstein's client list.
In the Epstein Files.
The Jeffrey Epstein client list.
One of the things a lot of people are wondering, because you said last week that you have the Epstein files on your desk, is when can we see them and what's taking so long to release them?
I do. Jesse, there are well over, this will make you sick, 200 victims. 200. So we have, well over 250 actually. So we have to make sure that their identity is protected and their personal information. But other than that, I think tomorrow, the personal information of victims. Other than that, I think tomorrow, Jesse, breaking news right now, you're going to see some Epstein information being released by my office.
What kind? Are we going to see who was on the flights? Are we going to see any evidence from what he recorded? Because he had all of his homes wired with recording devices.
Yeah. What you're going to see, hopefully tomorrow, is a lot of flight logs, a lot of names, a lot of information, but it's pretty sick what that man did.
Okay, well, we'll
along
look for
with his
that.
Co-defendant.
Absolutely, and he had help. That's for
He
sure.
sure did.
What if I told you there is no Epstein list? We've been bombarded by rumors of the Epstein list, which is thought to be the holy grail of the Epstein case. Attorney General Pam Bondi said that the Epstein list or files were on her desk and they would be released today. She promised, quote, a lot of flight logs, unquote, and, quote, a lot of names, unquote. However, those documents contained no flight logs with a lot of names. Either she was lying on national television or she didn't even look at the documents that were being released today. Either way, it's extremely egregious. Bondi did not deliver on her promise. In fact, no one in federal law enforcement has sought justice for the little girls that Jeffrey Epstein trafficked for approximately 25 years. I've uploaded Epstein's Black Book to the internet in 2015, and I believe that's the closest we've come to an Epstein list because the Black Book contains the names of various perps. I also uploaded passenger manifests from Epstein's various sojourns, which I believe contain the names of various perps too. In the Epstein list or Epstein file narrative, I'm surmising Epstein kept a list of his child molesting clients as if he were a travel agent at the Jeffrey Epstein Travel Agency. The Epstein list narrative is problematic because he had their names and numbers in his Black Book. At best, the Epstein list is wishful thinking. At worst, it's a contrived meme. According to a New York Times article from July 8th, 2019, federal authorities seized hundreds, possibly thousands, of sexually suggestive photographs of girls who appear underage, as well as hand-labeled compact discs with titles like Girls Pics Nude and with the names redacted, like Young Redacted plus Redacted. Judging by the titles on the discs, Epstein was a purveyor of child rape material. The latter disc, named by the New York Times, is perhaps an indication of blackmail. Moreover, Business Insider reported that an FBI agent later confessed that, quote unquote, hard drives were taken from the safe. I believe that the impounded discs and hard drives would be an unparalleled source for identifying both perpetrators and victims in the Epstein child trafficking network. If federal authorities are truly committed to justice, then Americans should be given access to the names of the perpetrators on the discs and the hard drives. The victims of Epstein's massive cache of child rape material also need to be acknowledged and help with the psychological devastation that invariably accompanies being used as fodder for child rape material. It's a rather peculiar facet of our society that people's attention is fixated on the names of the perpetrators. And sadly, the destruction of children over the course of 25 years is never mentioned when Epstein is discussed in the media. I think the latter fact is probably the result of grooming by the mainstream media, because I'm not aware of any media outlets demanding justice for Epstein and his ilk's numerous victims. But they're nonetheless engrossed by manufacturing salacious content about the Epstein perps. In a defamation lawsuit against Ghislaine Maxwell, Virginia Giuffre accused the following men of being among her perpetrators: Alan Dershowitz, Prince Andrew, former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson, billionaire Glenn Dubin, former U.S. Senator George Mitchell, scientist Marvin Minsky, modeling agent Jean-Luc Brunel, Les Wexner, and also the former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak. The rich and powerful men named by Giuffre issued public denials, and that appeared to be the extent of their fates vis-a-vis federal law enforcement. Epstein's Black Book is also the source of numerous alleged perpetrators. The prime mover of the Black Book surfacing was Alfredo Rodriguez, a former Epstein house manager. He purloined a copy of Epstein's contacts, their addresses, and phone numbers before leaving Epstein's employ in 2005. The Black Book also contains the names of numerous victims. In 2009, Rodriguez's grand plan was to hawk the Black Book to an attorney representing some of the Epstein victims in civil lawsuits. His fee was $50,000. The attorney in question reported Rodriguez's hijinks to the FBI, which snared Rodriguez and the Black Book in a sting. The FBI had previously interviewed Rodriguez, but he said nary a word about the Black Book. So he was charged with federal obstruction of justice. Rodriguez received an 18-month sentence for that offense, the same sentence received by his former employer for molesting an underage girl. Rodriguez, however, had to serve his sentence in a federal prison instead of a county jail. The assistant U.S. attorney prosecuting Rodriguez was Anne-Marie Villafana, and she did not veer from the Department of Justice's pattern of disingenuousness. Villafana told the judge in the Rodriguez case that his failure to yield the Black Book was a lost opportunity for the government's Epstein investigation. But she neglected to mention that the Justice Department didn't even need the Black Book to prosecute Epstein for pedophilic crimes because it already possessed a list of 34 victims. After the FBI busted Rodriguez attempting to peddle the Black Book, one of the arresting agents stated in an affidavit that the Black Book had the, quote, names and contact information of material witnesses, unquote. Rodriguez also circled several names in the Black Book, but the FBI affidavit does not delineate if the circled names are material witnesses. The circled names, however, include that of Ghislaine Maxwell and that of Sarah Kellen, two of Epstein's primary pimps. Rodriguez also circled the name of Alan Dershowitz, for whom Epstein had 11 phone numbers in the Black Book. In January of 2015, Virginia Giuffre named the former Harvard Law School professor and superstar lawyer as a perpetrator in an affidavit filed by her attorneys Brad Edwards and former federal judge Paul Cassell. In the affidavit, Giuffre stated that she had sex with Dershowitz, quote, at least 6 times, unquote. Dershowitz gave an interview to The American Lawyer in January of 2015, vindicating himself as a perpetrator. He said, "I've been married to the same woman for 28 years. She goes with me everywhere. People know that I won't argue a case or even give a speech unless my wife travels with me." But Epstein's flight logs show that Dershowitz accompanied Epstein on a December 1997 flight from Palm Beach to New Jersey's Teterboro Airport. And they were accompanied by one unidentified female, as well as a Hazel, a Claire, and Ghislaine Maxwell. A 2005 flight log shows that Epstein and Dershowitz traveled from Massachusetts to Montreal with a Tatiana et al. Dershowitz's wife is noticeably absent on those flights and others. In the Gawker article I wrote about the flight logs, Dershowitz's steel trap mind became rather rusty. As for who else was on those flights, Dershowitz couldn't recall. Hazel? I don't know, he said. Claire? I have no idea. Tatiana? I think that was a woman in her 20s who was Epstein's girlfriend, but I never flew with her. The unidentified female? That could have been my mother. In 2022, Virginia Giuffre said that she had, quote, may have made a mistake, unquote, when naming Dershowitz as a perpetrator. Rodriguez also circled the name of Jean-Luc Brunel in Epstein's Black Book, and Epstein had 16 phone numbers for him. Brunel was the third perpetrator Giuffre named in her 2015 affidavit. Epstein financed Brunel's Miami-based modeling agency, MC Squared. And Brunel was a frequent flyer on the Lolita Express. Palm Beach County jail logs also show that he visited Epstein 67 times when Epstein was ostensibly confined to the county jail for 13 months. The Daily Beast reported that Brunel, like Epstein, was an ethical eunuch. He has been accused by former models of drugging and date raping them, and by former employees of recruiting foreign underage girls to be pimped out of Epstein's New York City apartments. Rodriguez circled the names of Bill Richardson, the former New Mexico governor, and also President Clinton's Secretary of Energy, and billionaire Glenn Dubin. Epstein had 5 numbers for Richardson and 8 numbers for Dubin. Giuffre named both Richardson and Dubin as perpetrators. Richardson was a visitor to Zorro Ranch, Epstein's spread in the rolling hills outside of Santa Fe, where Epstein reportedly had underage girls delivered. Epstein also contributed $100,000 to Richard's gubernatorial campaigns. When Richardson was governor, Epstein did not have to register as a sex offender in New Mexico, which breached federal law. Hedge fund billionaire Glenn Dubin had a protracted friendship with Epstein, and his model turned medical doctor wife, Eva Anderson, had once dated Epstein. In fact, Rodriguez circled Anderson's name in the Black Book too. After Epstein served his 13 months in the Pokey, Glenn and Eva Dubin invited him to their home for Thanksgiving in 2009. Prior to that Thanksgiving, Anderson wrote an email to Epstein's probation officer stating that she and her husband were, quote unquote, 100% comfortable with Epstein being around their children, including their teenage daughter. Rodriguez also circled the names of former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak and former L-Brands potentate and billionaire Les Wexner. Barak and Wexner were also named by Giuffre as perpetrators. Barak frequently lodged at the Upper East Side apartment building owned by Epstein's brother, and he even visited Epstein's private Caribbean island, Orgy Island. In 2004, Barak received a $2.4 million infusion from a foundation where Epstein was a trustee and major donor. And in 2015, Epstein reportedly invested $1 million in a technology startup that Barak was launching. Even if there's no Epstein list, like there's no Jeffrey Epstein travel agency, We nonetheless have lots of names. However, we don't need names at this point. We need prosecutions. If the federal government is actually committed to arresting the perpetrators in Epstein's child trafficking network, we have enough names for a fantastic start. The Justice Department has a superb tool to prosecute the perpetrators in the Epstein network: the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organization Act, also known as RICO. A RICO conspiracy is a federal crime that entails indicting individuals for crimes that are part of an organized criminal enterprise. And the Epstein trafficking network was absolutely an organized criminal enterprise. In the case of the mafia and RICO, federal prosecutors often indict the small fry crooks of the criminal enterprise on multiple crimes or RICO predicates. When the small fry crooks find themselves staring at decades in prison, if not life, they frequently roll over on their cohorts who are higher on the criminal food chain. I can even tell the feds where they should start. A New York Times article from August 29th, 2019 names Ghislaine Maxwell, Sarah Kellen, Leslie Groff, Adriana Ross, Nadia Marcinkova, and Haley Robson as procurers, or otherwise pimps, for the Epstein criminal enterprise. The case that put Maxwell in prison was truly a travesty of justice. Two of her indictments consisted of conspiracy to entice minors to travel and engage in illegal sex acts, and also conspiracy to transport minors with the intent to engage in criminal sexual activity. Though Maxwell was indicted on two conspiracies, none of her criminal cohorts were indicted, which makes absolutely no sense. The Justice Department, under two Democratic presidential administrations and two Republican administrations, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, Joseph Biden, and the prior Trump administration, has failed to indict the perpetrators and procurers in Epstein's pedophile network. After Epstein apparently killed himself, the feds declared that his case was closed. And it was reported by NPR, NBC, USA Today, CNN, CNBC, Time, and Business Insider. So I filed a Freedom of Information Act that requested the reports on the disks taken from Epstein's safe. And the FBI told me that the case was still ongoing. A government that covers up child trafficking in legal parlance is aiding and abetting child trafficking. A government that aids and abets child trafficking has lost its soul. Please join us at Epstein Justice as we restore the soul of America.